In today's video, I will discuss how a small island in Europe went on to conquer the world. In the 16th century, Britain made their first attempts at overseas colonization. However, they were quite slow at colonization and did not invest much into it until the 17th century, as a way to compete with France. During this time, they set up more colonies within North America and the West Indies, such as New England, Maryland, Virginia, and some small settlements in Bermudas, Honduras, Antigua, Barbados, and Nova Scotia. They also conquered Jamaica and allowed the Hudson's Bay and East India companies to colonize. In 1661, the first permanent British settlement in Africa was established on James Island in the Gambia, on the Gambia River, that is. Britain acquired the Cape of Good Hope in 1806, opening it to Boer and British pioneers. Interestingly enough, most of these colonies were created by companies, not the government itself. The British Empire had a very disorganized start, but slowly the British Crown placed their authority over the colonies, especially over trade and shipping. They used a system called mercantilism, where each colony could hold a monopoly over raw materials, but would have to use English ships to trade it. Through the Navigation Acts of 1651, all colonial exports had to be shipped on English ships to Britain, and all imports had to come through England. However, the impact of Adam Smith's book Wealth of Nations, the loss of the American colonies, and free trade broke the system by the 19th century. Slavery was a very important and controversial issue throughout the empire. By 1807, the British government banned the slave trade, and by 1833 banned slavery as a whole, both in Britain and in their colonies. An important thing to remember when understanding the British Empire is their centuries-long rivalry with France. Some of the most important colonies to Britain, Canada and India, were gained through war with France. The 7 Years' War, or as us Americans call it, the French and Indian War, ended with France ceding all of Canada to Britain, as well as all French territory east of the Mississippi. In India, the British East India Company confronted I do not speak French, the Compagnie des Indes. Their victories over the French company later led to Britain's colonization of the Indian subcontinent. The loss of the 13 American colonies in 1783 was compensated by the establishment of settlements in Australia only 5 years later in 1788, as well as the immigration of loyalists from the American colonies to Canada. The Napoleonic Wars saw Britain become the rulers of Trinidad and Sri Lanka in 1802, with Tobago, Mauritius, St. Lucia, and Malta joining in 1814. 5 years later, Singapore was added to Britain's possessions. Britain continued expanding west of Canada, as well as conquering more of the Indian subcontinent. By the 19th century, the British Empire was more organized and stable. New England was acquired in 1840. As a result of mission work in these areas, Fiji, Tonga, Papua, and other Pacific islands were conquered. After the Indian Mutiny of 1857, the British Crown took the place of the East India Company as rulers of India, adding more parts of the Indian subcontinent as well as Myanmar to their domain. After the completion of the Suez Canal, Britain could more easily get to their colonies in India. They also conquered Somaliland and Cyprus as checkpoints, you could say, to get to India. In 1841, Hong Kong was British territory, and in the 1880s, Brunei and Sarawak became protectorates. The British Empire grew tremendously in Africa, as they conquered Egypt, Nigeria, Ghana, the Gambia, Kenya, Uganda, southern and northern Rhodesia, which are now called Zimbabwe and Zambia, and Malawi. After a victory in the South African War, Britain was able to annex the Transvaal and the Orange Free State, creating South Africa. By the end of the 19th century, the British Empire controlled 1/4 of the world by both surface and population. It earned the title of the Empire where the sun never sets, for it was always day in at least one part of the vast British Empire. As time went on, the British colonies began exercising more self-governance. This trend started in Canada before spreading to Australia, New Zealand, and the Cape Colony, which was later combined with South Africa. By 1907, these colonies were given the title of dominions. These dominions were called the British Commonwealth, foreshadowing the creation of the modern British Commonwealth. By the end of World War I, These dominions were essentially independent nations, as they had created treaties on their own and joined the League of Nations. By 1931, the dominions were officially recognized as nations equal to Britain, but remained parts of the British Empire. When World War II rolled around, the dominions declared war on their own, instead of Britain declaring war on their behalf. By the end of the war, the colonies were still not dominions, saw a rise in nationalism. With the efforts of men such as Gandhi, India and Pakistan gained independence from Britain in 1947. Only a year later, Myanmar and Sri Lanka gained their independence. In 1957, the Gold Coast, which is now known as Ghana, gained its independence, becoming the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence from Britain. By the year 1960, independence movements accelerated as a result of the British people's disillusion with the empire and pressure from the United Nations. More and more colonies gained their independence from the British Empire. By 1997, Hong Kong was returned to China. The sun had finally set on the British Empire. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Thank you.